Hey fam, welcome back to Rooted in Faith, Rising in Freedom. Today we're diving into a topic talked not nearly enough, and it's one of the most uncomfortable parts of awakening. Those are like projections, spiritual attacks, and the power of words in the spiritual warfare. Keep it real, just keeping it real. Spiritual awakening is not just about discovering your purpose or seeing synchronicities and angel numbers and whatnot. Sometimes it's just about walking through fire, and you will encounter people who do not mean you will. For me, the last 10 years felt like a whole world was one big fat hater. If you're like coming from a certain, perspective, yeah, it could seem like that. But what I later realized is that it wasn't just haters, it was a spiritual final exam. Gladiator style exam. This was a spiritual exam on spiritual warfare. And God, in His mercy, does not dump it all at once. He walks you through it one episode, one season, one grade at a time. And each time, that test gets deeper, the weight gets heavier. So do the tests. Just like in school, we don't start off, you don't start off throwing algebra to a kindergartner. Spiritually, the same way. We all start learning the 1, 2, 3s, ABCs, before we start battling principalities in high places. And if we know Ephesians, we don't fight against flesh and blood. We fight against principalities in the heavenlies. So for those who know, I know everyone's walking a different path, and we all have different belief systems. Personally, I was raised Catholic and later evolved into contemporary non-denominational faith, but the core kind of remained the same. Because of that foundation, I was already aware of spiritual attacks and aware of the reality of unseen realms. Here's the truth. We live in a 3D world. So, our 3D world, we kind of know, like, if we can see it, touch it, smell it, and feel it, or see it, then that's real. Well, that's not the only thing that's there. Only because you can't see it, that doesn't mean it's not there. Like the wind. If you could feel the wind, you can't see it, you can't touch it, but it's there, right? Same thing. So there's something beyond the 3D that we need to be made aware of. The real battles, they happen in the 5th, 6th, and 7th dimensions. What we see is just a result of a war fought in the spirit. The spirit first. Everything is spiritual. Your money matters. Relationships, breakdowns, sudden chaos. They didn't just happen. They all started in the spirit realm. Your thoughts, your actions, your words, they're spiritual currency. And the energy you release always returns, good or bad. So how do you know you're being spiritually attacked? Well, for one, unexplained fatigue. And that doesn't mean that if you have a condition that you normally deal with, that you're chronically fatigued, like if you have diabetes or, hypothyroidism or whatever else, make sure you're going to your doctor, because that may signify something else. I'm talking about like if you're emotionally, mentally, and spiritually drained for no reason when you're normally not. And how about emotional chaos that like out of nowhere, you're suddenly like waves of frustration, anxiety, confusion, or anger. Often right after you were around certain people or certain like places, because that's a projection. That could be a projection. Random blockages that could be like after certain conversations or visits with certain people. You'll see money delays, doors suddenly closing, conflicts in your relationships, a general sense of something's off. So if you sense something is off. Trust your intuition. What are projections? Well, when people gossip, slander, lie, or make accusation, they're casting spiritual darts. These are word curses. They may not call it witchcraft, but it is. That's exactly what that is. Word magic. Manipulating energy with the tongue is a form of witchcraft. People don't realize that. I call these type of people word witches because they don't use their voice to edify or uplift, but to confuse, control, cause chaos, and curse. That's it. And there's people there's verses in the Bible that speak to this. There's Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it eat its fruits. Whatever you speak comes back to you, whether good or bad, remember? And then Proverbs 11:13, gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy person keeps a secret. In Proverbs 26:22, words of a whisperer are like delicious morsels. They go down into the inner parts of the body. And I noticed that there's like a huge difference between people that don't partake into gossiping and doing all that nonsense versus the people that I've been around that love to do that gossip, rumor, all that. The difference is that people that they don't partake on that, or they don't entertain that kind of behavior. They usually are really upbeat and they're uplifting, and their energy is so magnetic. You want to be around them, and they look vibrant. They're youthful, no matter what age they are. If you ever notice, their energy is just really upbeat. They look good for their age, whatever age they are. And then if you take the people that are like the gossipy, they badmouth everybody, they're like angry all the time and just speak stuff out of their mouth. They're always talking shit. Well, if you notice that, like, they have like this, they look haggard. Their skin's all dull, and some of them look kind of pruny, like wrinkled. I'm not trying to be ugly, but some of them really look aged beyond their years, and nobody wants to be around them people, So, but yeah, it's a huge difference. And then looking back, I remember there's a science experiment done on this. It was they took like a fruit. It was other stuff tested on, but they took fruit, like it was a strawberry or something like that, and then a plant. So they had two groups. One was for positive, one was for negative. For a week or so, maybe a week, but the strawberry, somebody was speaking positive to it, good words, whatever. And the same with the plant. They spoke positive for a certain amount of time, and they noticed that those stayed intact. There was minimal amount of degradation or decomposition for the strawberry. Usually strawberries don't keep very long, but it wasn't like it didn't rot right away. And then the plant still looked luscious. Their leaves were luscious and green and perky. The negative strawberry, for the same amount of time, came out of the same batch. Negative words spoken to it. It was like, I hate you, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I would be kind of weird just talking to a strawberry, telling them you hate the strawberry, or just being negative towards it, spewing negativity. And then the same with the plant. Well, same time frame, same batch, that negative strawberry started to decompose pretty quickly. And you could look this study up. It was done. It was like the power of negative words or something like that. Because it's energy, it's frequency. And the plant too was like the leaves started like brown and get all crispy and fall off. It just wasn't doing well, poor thing. So yeah, it's just people don't realize that words are very powerful. It carries a lot of power. So like it says in Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it eat its fruits. What are you planting? What seeds are you planting? You know, do you want luscious strawberry or do you want the decomposing strawberry? You know, so it's just that. And people don't realize that too. Let me tell you my story. I was a notorious complainer. Yes, I'm going to, be straight up and, come out with this. But yeah, I was notorious for complaining, always complaining. I'm not happy about this. I'm not happy about that. And complain. And sometimes I'd irritate myself complaining. But I was like, I realized that this is not good. So why can't, and I was complaining about the complaint. So then I realized that why can't I get unstuck on certain situations? Why can't I move, or why don't I see progress? Why don't I, well, because I was doing that to myself. And I'm like, I'm sure other people do not want to hear this. So I had to really double down on myself and get out of that ugly ass habit, because it's horrible. And sure enough, when I started replacing the complaining with, good things like, God makes crooked paths straight for me. I'm blessed. I'm favored. Everything I put my hands to prospers. Stuff like that. I did notice a difference. And not to sugarcoat, like gossip, and going back to it, sugarcoating, gossip, slander, false accusations, all toxic, all negative energy. And if they stick, they can stick if you don't send it back. And that's a little next topic. Just briefly, it's about protecting your peace. So once you start noticing stuff that's not normal, learn how to distinguish that. For me, I can. It took me a while to pick up on it, to realize why all of a sudden am I angry? Why am I frustrated or fretting about something? And, I was just having a great day and I started with my cup of coffee. Now I'm pissed off and punch somebody out. That's not normal. I mean, it's like, am I having a hormone imbalance or what's going on? No. I realized that later on, learning about this, it hit me. Not only was when I was speaking negative, when I was a complainer, I was projecting towards myself, but I also noticed when there was like kind of like tit for tat stuff with other people. They'll say something or, they'll project something. So that's something I'm catching, but I wasn't aware of it at the time. And so I wasn't able to block it, not accept it for one, and then, block it from my energy. So I didn't realize that I was absorbing all this stuff. So when I became aware, I was able to apply what I learned from a few preachers would say, send that stuff back. And I did. I started learning how to pray to send it back. That's one thing you could do. A good example would be, I do not receive what is not mine. Any word, thought, or curse spoken in darkness, it gets returned to sender, back to sender. And I usually say in the mornings, and in the evenings before I go to bed, I go, any kind of negative thoughts, negative words, negative intentions, I send that back to the sender tenfold, 10 times with interest. And if you're a Christian, just say in Jesus' name. It doesn't have to be extravagant. Some people, want to do rituals. That's fine too. No, power. And when we're talking, when we're praying, that's power. That's exactly, that will counter anything. Prayers, and use the word. If you think about it, witches, I know I was making light about the word witches, but that is what that is. But there's actual witches, and warlocks, sorcerers, I can't say that word, who speak what? Spells. Spells is, spelling words, right? So, and then they do incantations, divination, enchantments. What else? Incantation, divinations. Yeah, they do that. Rituals. All that has to be spoken. A lot of it is spoken word. So to counter that, you don't accept it from one. You send it back. And you counter it with, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. That's Isaiah 54. all this is, I mean, people, when they think about black magic and stuff like that, they get freaked out. No, don't get freaked out. You have the power to cancel it, reverse it, send it back, and then counter it with the affirmation stuff. Like, you know, whatever I put my hands onto prospers. I'm blessed. I'm prosperous. I'm highly favored. When you say stuff like that, even if you don't know somebody's projecting something towards you, that stuff counters anything that anybody's trying to, you know, project towards you. So know that. Final thoughts. They may speak death, but you speak life, because your voice holds power too. Your prayers shake realms, and that is correct. Your words open portals, good portals, like portals of prosperity, portals of joy, happiness, love, whatever you want. You know, they open portals of, we don't want to know what they open, but as long as they're not in our energy. So your faith creates protection. So cancel the gossip, cancel the projections, return it to them, and walk in your spiritual authority God gave you, all of us. So if this message did hit home, then like it, share it with somebody else. And of course, you're not going crazy. This is just part of the awakening. I thought I didn't know what to think about a lot of this, you know. But stay grounded, stay protected, and keep rising in freedom. We'll talk soon.